For this Indigenous Peoples Day, that while we celebrate it here in the city of Albuquerque, in the state of New Mexico, that this indigenous population that I recognize in the piece of legislation that we passed does not just simply reflect on the Native American populations in the state of New Mexico. It's broader than that. It includes those indigenous populations in New Zealand that are fighting so hard to retain their identity. It is for those indigenous populations in South America that are standing up in front of bulldozers to ensure that their rainforests are no longer bulldozed down. It's for those that are in Central North America, in our own country, that are also standing in front of bulldozers, fighting against that great black snake that is seeking to move oil from point A to point B, knowing that should anything wrong happen, it is us that pays the consequences. It is our people that pay the consequences. It is our Mother Earth that pays the consequences. And at the end of the day, as indigenous populations, we have nowhere else to go. And we don't want to go anywhere else. Because our land, our culture, our environment is who makes us who we are. And so on a day like this, I want to recognize all our relatives from, yes, North America, from New Mexico, but also those relatives from Central America and South America, knowing that we don't cross borders, but those borders crossed us. And we accept all of our relatives, and we embrace all of our relatives, and we welcome all of our relatives, because as a whole, there is power in numbers, and we appreciate each and every one of you. So on this day, thank you so much for coming out to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. It's an honor and a pleasure to be amongst all of you. God bless you all, and again, happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you, Representative Lente, for those inspiring words. I am honored to introduce the city's Indigenous Peoples Day Proclamation, who is Chairwoman Rebecca Riley of the City of Albuquerque's Commission on American Indian and Alaska Native Affairs, and Kyle Tapaha, member of the Commission as well.
Greetings, everyone. Agush Eshse, Yakukuchin ish Hanoshita, Ashwashte Hanoshita. My name's Rebecca Riley, and in the Acoma-Keres language, that means flower. I'm from the Pueblo of Acoma. My maternal clan is Yellow Corn Clan, and my paternal clan is Sun Clan. Just want to express that I'm deeply honored to be here on behalf of the Commission, Albuquerque Commission on American Indian and Alaska Native Affairs. And on behalf of my fellow Commission members, I would like to provide this statement that is a collective words of both myself and my fellow commissioners here today, and they're visiting other parts of the city as well. On behalf of the Albuquerque Commission on American Indian and Alaska Native Affairs, we join in celebration and recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day and in solidarity for justice for our missing and murdered Indigenous women. We want to take a moment to also acknowledge the traditional territory of the Tiwa-speaking tribes of Sandia and Isleta Pueblos, whose ancestral land we call Albuquerque home. The indigenous tribes of New Mexico that we are going to name and include the Pueblos of Acoma, Cochiti, Jemez, Laguna, Nambay, Okeawinge, Picaris, Pewaukee, San Felipe, San Ildefonso, Santa Ana, Santa Clara, Kiwa, Taos, Chisuki, Zia, Zuni, and the Apache tribes of Fort Sill, Jicarilla, Mescalero, and the Navajo Nation. Of these resilient indigenous tribes in existence today, we are but a small fraction left after over 500 years of colonization by Spanish, Mexican, and United States governments. As the city of Albuquerque makes headway on addressing challenges affecting the Native population, which have predated any administration or political agenda, we all must continue to learn about, educate ourselves and others, advocate for, challenge and change the systems and policies that have historically caused harm and promoted racism against indigenous peoples. Today, our Native relatives of Albuquerque are still experiencing one of the highest rates of homelessness. In 2019, 30% of our Native children in New Mexico are still living in poverty, the highest rate of any race or ethnic group, according to a New Mexico Kids Count report. And we are ranked second for the highest number of missing and murdered indigenous women cases, as reported by the Urban Indian Health Institute. We need to keep doing better. Today, Albuquerque has one of the highest percentages of American Indians and Alaska Natives affiliated with a federally recognized tribe by the CDC. In addition, over 400 indigenous tribes are represented in Albuquerque alone, consisting of 8.2% of the population. The Native urban population and tribes continue to have an ever-growing presence and voice. We continue to live, since time immemorial and before borders, as educators, entrepreneurs, environmentalists, agriculturalists, and scientists. We are contributors to policy, health, law, government, business, education, and the arts. We are advocates, activists, leaders, facilitators, nation builders, and change makers. We are leaders and participants using our power and voice to bring about transformative change and healing, so we no longer have to survive, but thrive. We want to recognize all our indigenous relatives and tribes who are not acknowledged by the U.S. federal government, our relatives to the north, the First Peoples of Canada, and those who have since time immemorial have traveled to, traded with, and exchanged goods and innovations within Mexico, Central, and South America. Our collective indigenous history on this continent is a shared history, one where we consider ourselves stewards of the land. Land we are connected to by language, belief, and livelihood. Land we all have an obligation to protect. In closing, we want to thank the Native community and our allies of Albuquerque for being here with us, and to those who are watching virtually. We want to thank everyone for coming together in these most unprecedented times. We ask everyone to continue to support each other with kindness, compassion, and empathy, because the work is hard and we will continue to be challenged in unforeseen ways. As the Commission, we want to thank you for your support as well, and we want to express our continued mission and efforts to encourage, strengthen, and promote recognition and respect for the culture of Native people and our contributions to the city of Albuquerque, the state of New Mexico, and all across the country. Tawa, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Tapaha, touching in Lynn Trujillo, Bashashin, Kiani, Shiche, Tuabaha, Shanele. I work with Americans for Indian Opportunity, and I am a recent UNM graduate. I'm on the Commission for American Indian and Alaskan Native Affairs, as well as an Native American ambassador for Albuquerque Police Department. So it is my honor to read the executive order from the Office of the Mayor. It goes, whereas the City of Albuquerque, incorporated in 1891, acknowledges that it was built on the ancestral homelands of Indigenous peoples and is now home to Native American residents who represent as many as 408 tribes from across North America. And whereas historically, New Mexico was a hub of trade and cultural exchange between Mesoamerican and North American Indigenous peoples and became the site of the first revolution against European imperialism, known as the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. And whereas the Pueblo and tribes surrounding Albuquerque, including Isleta, Laguna, Sandia, Santa Ana, and the Navajo Nation, continue to stand as a testament to the resilience of Indigenous peoples throughout history, including their continued survival during the current COVID-19 pandemic. We are still here. And whereas the City of Albuquerque reaffirms its dedication and commitment to the rights of Indigenous peoples, achieving equitable participation with its Native American residents in all aspects of civic life, and its continuing commitment to engage in government-to-government consultation practices as set forth in City Ordinance 2-6-6-1 by establishing the Commission on American Indian and Alaska Native Affairs to regularly consult with tribal governments. And whereas the City of Albuquerque, by its action, is following the United States Constitution, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and the New Mexico State Tribal Collaboration Act, and the New Mexico Replace Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Act. And now, therefore, Timothy M. Keller, Mayor of the City of Albuquerque, do hereby proclaim October 11th, 2021 as Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Kyle. After a successful business career, Tim Keller refocused his professional life on tackling some of the biggest issues facing Albuquerque and New Mexico. Throughout his public service, from state senator for the International District to New Mexico State Auditor to Mayor of Albuquerque, Tim has consistently challenged the status quo and developed a track record of real impact. Tim became mayor on December 1st, 2017, after garnering 62% of the nonpartisan election. Everyone here for Indigenous Peoples Day, let's give a warm welcome to Mayor Tim Keller.
Well, good afternoon. It is great to be here with everyone on such a special day in our state and also in our city. And we have a number of things that we'd like to do in this section of our program. And I want to begin with some remarks, but then we're also going to take some action, and I'll explain exactly what that is in a little bit. But I want to thank everyone for coming today. You know, this is really the Thank you. So today we celebrate and honor the first peoples of this land. We know that the peoples and cultures that have cared for and sustained our land right here, of course, Tiwa land, this is what we meet on today, their land, in many ways for many of you. And we recognize that communities have made an invaluable contribution over the history of the city of Albuquerque. our United States Secretary of the Interior. So today is actually the third Indigenous Peoples Day in the history of Albuquerque. Sacrifices that communities have made for centuries to safeguard their cultures and their knowledge. Now, knowledge and culture that we are blessed with each and every day. So as a city, we continuously work to seek input and guidance from our Native American community. And I know that when I came into office, we tried to honor this through respecting sovereignty by creating our Office of Native American Affairs and becoming the first city in the nation to recognize tribal sovereignty with a Commission on American Indian and Alaska Native Affairs to truly establish government. I'll put this together, and I just want to pause for a minute. Many of you might not know them. Some of them were speaking before me, but let's just give them a round of applause. Albuquerque's Commission on Native American Affairs. Now, from their work on sustainability to economic development to health and safety and more, they have tried to make sure that the decisions we make are infused with Native American input. And we gather here today not just to honor Indigenous history and culture and contributions to community, but we also are here, of course, to name an epidemic, the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives. And as we go through the rest of the program today, you're going to hear a lot more about what's happening and what has not been happening, unfortunately, to actually bring justice to these women and their relatives. But I know that we must take every opportunity to raise awareness and push investigations of every person who goes missing, no matter where they're from. And for us, while these cases sometimes cross jurisdictions and can get very complicated legally, each person is a valued member of the Albuquerque community and deserves answers to be brought to light and justice to be served. Thank you. Now at APD, we're finding new ways to step up. We know that in the past, there's been a challenge with respect to this cross-jurisdictional prosecution and investigation of these cases. But now, under the leadership of Chief Medina, a former Laguna Pueblo chief, by the way, and our superintendent, who spent a couple of years up in Dulce and another 4 years out at Isleta, I'm proud that our APD leadership at least literally has some experience working out in Pueblo country and on the reservation. And with them, they bring a fresh look and will make the department take a fresh look at these cold cases, but bring new forensic technology to bear to try and bring some modicum of justice and truth. Now, our officers are going to speak in a few minutes with a little bit more on this, but because of the organizers, the work of the organizers that are here, the mothers and fathers and sons and daughters across North America who have spoken out about the unimaginably painful loss and crisis, they have shined a light on this issue for the rest of us. And I want to thank all the organizers. You are the reason why we are now taking action. And I wish it didn't take that. But I want to thank you for your advocacy and for holding us accountable. Let's give the organizers a round of applause and all those involved in this crisis and in this fight. Now, part of thinking about how we deal with the missing Indigenous women in our community is also about how to spread awareness. And one of the most amazing ways in America that we do that is through film, and powerful, provocative film that tells the truth. And I want to acknowledge someone here today because we're very fortunate to be joined by Rain. He's an acclaimed director of Somebody's Daughter, tonight's feature documentary they're going to watch here. And if Rain's here, Rain, we'd like to honor you on behalf of the city. There he is. Come on up, Rain. This film, give him a round of applause. This film is hauntingly beautiful, I think is the best way I can describe it, and emotionally devastating. But it has to be because of the topic that it covers. And it is one of the most important documentaries on this crisis and on life in Indian country in the 21st century. So Rain, on behalf of the City of Albuquerque, I want to present you with Albuquerque's Outstanding Contribution to Film Award for this groundbreaking piece.
There you go. Yeah, watch it. We'll hold it, shake hands, yeah, you got it. And thank you so much. We'll hear from you later. Okay, thank you.
All right, more on the film later. Thank you so much, Rain. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about what's going on in our community and some of the healing and reconciliation that we're attempting out at 4-H Park. I know many of you know what has happened out there and what we have resurfaced, but I want to recap it just for a moment for those folks who might not be aware. But 4-H Park, of course, is part of the old Indian School property out just between here and Old Town. And Albuquerque Indian School operated federal policy of forced separation and of re-education and cultural erasure. And I know for families who went through this, you know exactly what it was like. But I think it is very important that we tell the story of what happened, because I know, being born and raised here, it took me learning about this as an adult, and it should not have. We have to tell this story to everyone in our country, but also right here in Albuquerque, because it is part of our history, even though it is a terrible part of our history. Now, we began speaking with the commission that I mentioned, the area pueblos, the tribal leaders, and community stakeholders who really understood what happened there, that it was a burial ground for children who died at the Indian School. And this was back kind of in the 20s and 30s in that era. And of course, there was a plaque that was stolen, and that's what tipped everyone off to what had happened there, those who didn't know about it. But rather than replacing the plaque, we are going to try and do this better this time around and make sure that the right story is told, that those families are honored in the traditional way, in whichever way they choose, and also that place is respected in a way that it's not right now. So we're working on this. It's an ongoing process. If you're interested in being involved, there's going to be lots of opportunities to engage with this process going forward. But I do want to mention that just a couple of weeks ago, as a city, we formally acknowledged the importance of this site. And we also made sure that we were grateful for the guidance that was given by Native American leaders and the consultation that we had with 8 tribes who've been involved, some of them very far away from our city, including the Southern Ute tribe in Utah and Colorado. And we're following their recommendations. And one of those is a formal resolution to recognize the burial site. And before we get to that, I just want to acknowledge, too, a couple of weeks ago, we made sure and made it clear that as a city, at least, we formally apologized for not only the way that was handled in the past in terms of when we built the park, but also for the concept of these boarding schools that absolutely were wrong in every way, whether it was tearing apart families or erasing culture. And so I want to just reiterate that apology on the city's behalf today. So the second part of a long, long road, just the beginning of reconciliation, is now doing this by ordinance as a city. And so I want to invite up our city councilors who are here today, and also if our state legislators would like to join us. What we're going to do is council wonderfully took prompt action. Sponsors Ike Benton, Cynthia Borrego, and Councilor Sena, they passed a resolution that had unanimous support. And that resolution does a number of things, but it acknowledges formally the intergenerational trauma that boarding school left, and it also commits us to work together towards healing and reconciliation in the future. And so if folks, the counselors, if you want to have a seat, what we're going to do is try and demonstrate some action. We're going to sign this into law right here with all of you. And so bear with us as we get set up. Thank you. And before we do that, I also want to highlight where many of the important speakers are going to get to this in just a moment, including our governor, who's up next. But also we're going to sign an executive order on behalf of the city about missing and murdered Indigenous women and families in terms of awareness. And so you can come up and see this later, but this will also be signed here today on behalf of the city. So let's get this done. Executive order. Okay, that's now ordinance in the city of Albuquerque. Thank you so much. Sure. All right, thank you so much, Councilors Sena and Benton, who are here, and our wonderful legislators. I know some had to go, but wonderful to see Senator Pope and Senator Duhigg, and I think I got all my intros, and of course Senator Pinto, who we're going to hear from in a little bit. So, listen, with that, we actually did something here today that no other city, that we know of at least, in America has done. And so thank you for giving us the courage and the wisdom and the power to make good policy on Indigenous Peoples Day. Now with that, it's an honor for me to introduce a woman who needs little introduction. She has been a champion for Indian country from the day she began her public service career, whether it was congresswoman or county commissioner or secretary at the state level or now our governor. Please put your hands together for Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham.
We're taking a minute break for the tall situation. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a beautiful day in the state of New Mexico where we are clear about celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. It was incredible for me to listen to the other speakers, including the mayor, and watch with pride as our elected leaders are clear about our responsibility to uplift and to change how we feel about this day in particular, but every other day moving forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Council for inviting me today. I want to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered is in fact the ancestral land of the Tiwa people. I'm honored to be here. Thank you. Somebody was clapping about that. And as I stated, I'm incredibly honored to be with you, everyone here today on this Indigenous Peoples Day. Today we come together to celebrate and honor the tremendous contributions that New Mexico's Indigenous people and communities have made throughout history. And indeed, we must also remember the terrible losses that they have endured. New Mexico is proudly home to 23 nations, tribes, and pueblos. We join just 13 other states in celebrating this holiday, and on Friday, President Joe Biden became the first U.S. president in history to issue a proclamation recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. And while we still have so much work to do, these actions indicate to me, and I hope to you as well, that a critical shift in this country is occurring, acknowledging that Indigenous voices have for far too long been left out of our nation's narrative. And that today is the day that it changes. Thank you. Here in New Mexico, we know that tribal nations are a beautiful and unique part of our state's vibrant and multicultural identity. Indigenous people are incredible examples of what it means to protect and nurture your culture, traditions, languages, family, and community. New Mexico tribal nations have always shown resilience and strength in the face of challenging circumstances, including during the COVID-19 pandemic, when they served as global models of what caring for ourselves and caring for our communities is supposed to look like. And I'd like to lean in here in particular. In many of New Mexico's sovereign nations, they are now the safest and most vaccinated populations, not just in the United States, but around the globe. Creating not only science-based, evidence-based leadership that work to protect their tribal communities, that work protected New Mexico as a nation and protected our border states in this area as well. And I think it is worth sharing and remembering from this day forward that leadership about saving lives, about putting their families first, about engaging with the state in a partnership to attack and address a worldwide deadly global pandemic is exactly the work that you can expect all of us to continue to do to solve every single challenge that is still before us in this state. And as we do that, thank you, LaDonna, and as we do that, we will serve as role models for the changes that need to occur all across this nation, and quite frankly, still must occur all across the globe. In August, I committed the state to conserving 30% of our lands by 2030. In New Mexico, our lands and waters have significance far beyond their beauty and their bounty. These are sacred places where Indigenous people have lived for millennia. Throughout this process, the sovereignty and self-determination of New Mexico's tribes, pueblos, and nations will be front and center. We will work together closely to meet this goal with recognition of the cultural and spiritual significance of so many of our incredible landscapes. Thank you. When it's windy, all I can do is think about how much renewable, clean, green energy we're creating in the state. So I'm all right with a little wind. I'm all right with a lot of wind. In May of this year, I signed an executive order that strengthens New Mexico's missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives task force, ensuring that this important work is continued in a powerful, meaningful way, and that we do everything we can to say unequivocally, no more. Not one more missing or murdered Indigenous person. We'll continue to fight for every available resource to protect Indigenous women and relatives, prevent these crimes from happening, and to hold perpetrators accountable. And as governor of this incredible state, I will continue to work to uplift our tribal communities however I can. I aspire to uphold our responsibility to America's first citizens, who continue to be among the strongest advocates for our beautiful natural resources. I acknowledge our shared past, and that is essential to advocating and advancing justice and equity for New Mexico's Indigenous citizens. I would also thank you. That's worth clapping for. It is. I also want to tell you that I'm incredibly proud of the leadership of the Department of Indian Affairs, our Secretary Lynn Trujillo. Would you please stand? She is a fierce leader in every right and continues to be an incredible and outspoken voice for equality and equity, and not just here, but across this great nation and around the world. Secretary, thank you for your continued leadership, your work on the task force to prevent and do everything possible about murdered and Indigenous persons, and for the work that you will continue to do to preserve, protect our sacred lands, our sacred peoples, and to make sure that this is a holiday every single year that speaks to justice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Another round of applause.
Our next special guests are going to share the significance of New Mexico Senate Memorial 38. They are part of a grassroots volunteer group that was formed when the late New Mexico Senator Dr. John Pinto, my former boss, introduced the memorial in support of then U.S. Congresswoman Deborah Hall for a national investigation into MMIWR. Please welcome Senator Shannon Pinto and my mom, McHenry County Commissioner Genevieve Jackson.
Thank you, Yate. It's great to be here, and I think everyone that's here, way deep down, cares at one point for what we are here for. And for all those rallies in the past to bring awareness to this issue, thank you. And thank you for bringing us here today again, Charmaine, and all those planners and organizers, and all our leaders that are here with us today. It is very important that we do represent those who do not have a voice, always, especially if we have a voice. My grandfather, late senator, in 1987, sponsored law proclaiming American Indian Day in the state. He created the first state cabinet level Indian Affairs Department and established the Senate Indian Affairs Committee. Those are important in the state of New Mexico, as we do have our 23 Indian pueblos and nations that are represented through those entities. I am so grateful, way deep down, that he kept his people in mind always. Even before I got here, even before she got here, that he planned these things and had a vision for the representation of Indigenous tribes into the future. In 2019, Senate Memorial 38, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Memorial, was significant also into the awareness that this number, the numbers kept climbing, and we still have those that are out there waiting to be found, waiting to be saved. And coming here today, or thinking about today, especially as a Native American, you know, every day, but today, as I thought about it, it brings about all those times when you suffered and were overlooked because of the color of your skin, in which someone turned their back on you because you were a woman, that they didn't think you were strong enough or were capable enough to do things. And it hurt, but we are here. I am here. I survived. And that was one thing I asked someone. I said, what's the message that should really be brought today for me? And she said, about surviving. You survived. And those that were victims, those that have survived, continue to survive. But within them, within us, within each person, there is that warrior blood, whether it be one drop, and for some of them, it is a lot as they represent us in our armed forces. But that warrior blood boiled over, and they decided at one point that they were going to survive, and became strong enough to reach out to someone and tell them. And even for those that were watching or looking or saw some kind of indignity happening to someone inhumanely, that they stepped in and told them that that was enough and stopped it. And to those survivors, to the present day, I hope they continue with their stories. I know many times we don't tell it because it seems to be a dark era or dark point in our lives. But it is important that it exists still in some form, in some way. Because my hope in the work I do and a lot of the things I try to make sure I get to sleep at night is that whatever I did that day is for our children. Those that are not here, those that are here now, that they do not go through some of that somehow, some way, sometime, it will not happen to them. It is a long road. The times and the seconds are there, and they add up. But I hope today and in the future, at some point, for all the families, that you find atonement, that justice is out there for you, as it was for my family. That closure, and you hope it's positive. But that closure is significant to moving forward and making progress so that you know how you got there. How did that happen? Who brought it there? And even with that, it's understanding the other part. Why did they do it? What factors laid into it that brought them to that point? to do something horrendous to another human being. And you don't want to have to tell somebody or make law that keeps them from doing it. But that's where we are. That is the future. So we will find out these gaps, do the work needed, get our reports back, and continue for you the work that will allow you to have a better life, for your children to have a better life, for them to live in safety and walk peacefully and see the beauty around them, below them, above them, in front of them, behind them, and to see that the person next to them on both sides is beautiful too, and that they have value as they do. Thank you for being here today, and I'm very honored to speak here today. And to all my leaders that have come before me to speak and to do the work, thank you. Ahiaha. I would like to introduce a dear family member, Ms. Genevieve Jackson. She's the county commissioner and I believe the president at 45 chapter.
Yes.
Thank you and welcome, Ms. Genevieve Jackson.
Yate! Yate! Thank you. Very happy to be here, and I'm not going to go over what's already been expressed. I'm always been known as a rebel, and I'll continue that role until I drop. So, this is my daughter, Charmaine, who lost hours of sleep putting this, her and her volunteers put together. And I did something right in my life. I raised an activist here. Also, I want to introduce my husband, Ron Wood, my granddaughter with the red CA. She's teaching her to be proud to be Native. So thank you. Thank you for being here. We don't number in the hundreds, but the spirit is strong. I can feel the spirit. Thank you, thank you. And although many leaders are here and have supported that we're going forth, which is great, we have survived for hundreds of years because we are survivalists. We are resilient. A great philosopher said, an organism that refuses to change will not survive. But we as natives, we have survived. For many, many years, we have survived the long walk. We have survived the Trail of Tears. We have survived Little Big Horn. Many, many battles on this land because this is our land. But we have to change. We have to accept. But that does not mean that we should continue and we can't progress. There has been a huge lack of advocacy for Native American women. Native Americans in general, but especially for women. And we're supposed to be a matriarchal society? No, it's not recognized. But we need to instill that in our sons that we're bringing forth. We need to instill that because they will respect and honor women as they go forth in life. There has been a lack of resources. There has been a lack of funding. There has been a lack of manpower, women power, to address these issues. For many, many years now, we have been silent for too long. We have hundreds of Native American women missing. They are our mothers, our daughters, our nieces, our nephews, murdered. Also, the same with our menfolk. They have been murdered. And I am so tired of hearing there's not enough resources. There's not enough FBI people or police people to find our children. I am tired of it. Are you? So each one of us have a duty. We all represent and we come from different pueblos. Go back and spread the word and bring awareness to this issue that we are addressing today. I am a Navajo Nation ex-councilwoman, and I've always been a rebel ever since I was in the boarding school. I spent 13 years in a boarding school, and talk about repression. They know how to do that very well. And I'm so honored that we have the Nesani for March for Justice, excuse me, here today. Catherine Benali, are you here? I saw you earlier. Haji Inlwood. There she is. We marched 3 weeks ago in Window Rock to bring attention, but we didn't, apparently they didn't hear us. The Navajo Nation Council is male dominated, and so therefore the women issues, the social issues, the family issues, they have a tendency to fall to the wayside. So our job is to bring attention to these issues. Also want to introduce two of my heroes that are here with us. And when I left the council, I was so afraid. Who is going to stand up for the women? Who is going to speak? And two of them are here. Delegate Amber Crotty and also Eugenia Charleston. My daughters, I am so happy. I also forgot to mention, I am Tachini Nanishtejadane. That means many, many, many years ago, a Zuni woman became part of our clan, and we'll never lose that. And I don't know my father, never saw him, never knew him. And my grandpa raised me, my grandma, and my grandpa is from the Hamas clan. We never, never lose that lineage. And this woman you see here on this poster, her name is Erin Tapahi. She is my granddaughter. Her dad, Tapahi also here. Photography, that is her father. He's my nephew. So this is a whole family affair. And you need to make it a family affair, ladies and gentlemen, all of you. We are all in this together. And to progress, to go forth, to bring to light our issues for our daughters, for our grandchildren. This is what we need to do. We need attention. We need to be advocates. We need more people, Native people here in the city government, not just one or two, more. We need more people at the state level, advocating for our people as representatives, as senators. More people, more Native, so they can bring light to these issues. And I forgot what else I was going to say. It's really easy to sit back there and click them off, but when you get up here to the people, you forget. So, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. County Commissioner David Jackson and my mom. Our next leader is working to increase accountability to the community. As chairwoman of the New Mexico Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives Task Force, please give a big, huge welcome to Cabinet Secretary Lynn Trujillo of the State of New Mexico Human Affairs Department.
I have something in common with the governor. I need a step stool as well. Good afternoon to all my relatives. My name is Lynn Trujillo. I have the distinct honor and privilege to serve as a secretary for the Indian Affairs Department. I'm extremely honored to be here with you today. I was reflecting upon that as I was sitting with these incredible women, Indigenous leaders, strong women who are advocating for all of us. I want to also acknowledge that I'm proud to be here on the ancestral lands of my people, the Tiwa people. I want to thank Mayor Tim Keller, as well as Don Begay and the staff of the City of Albuquerque, of Office of Equity and Inclusion, and Naalkid Productions, as well as the Dene Tasani for Justice organizers for today's event. Today, we not only gather to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, we also gather to bring voice and justice for our missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives. Here in New Mexico, Indigenous women, girls, men, and Two-Spirit people are far more likely to experience violence, be murdered, or go missing. And this crisis has its roots in colonialism and racism, and is perpetuated by indifference and silence. The responsibility falls on each one of us to end this historic violence against our Indigenous communities, which has devastated us for far too long. And finally, this crisis has begun to be recognized by the general public and policymakers, although our communities have been traumatized by this set of injustices for centuries. I want to thank all of you warriors on the front lines, like you, Miski, who continue to create space and use your voice so that no one forgets. I pray for your continued strength and want you to know that you are heard and you are not alone in the fight. Here in New Mexico, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives Task Force is focused on addressing this crisis at a state level through systemic, legislative, and social change. The task force brings together representatives from across government, law enforcement, direct service providers, community members from the trans, LGBTQ, and Two-Spirit communities, and others. It will take everyone to change the system to make sure our relatives are protected, honored, and heard, and ultimately bring justice and healing to individuals and families and our communities. The task force is supported by the Indian Affairs Department, and we will continue to work towards providing a state response plan that will advise our governor and state lawmakers about solutions that can be implemented across state government. New Mexico can and must do better. I am grateful that Governor Lujan Grisham supports the work of the department and the task force. I know the immense responsibility we have. We will continue to fight alongside each one of you to give voice, to bring justice, to heal, to bring our relatives home. Let us continue to draw upon the strength and guidance of our ancestors. My prayers and blessings go out to all of you and your families. Herkem. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Trujillo. Leading in step with our community and law enforcement commitment to MMIWR and the city's commitments to the community, Deputy Chief Josh Brown of Albuquerque Police Department. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. On behalf of the Albuquerque Police Department, thank you for having us today and allowing us a few moments of your time. I'd like to talk about, in the last 21 years, we've had a lack of communication. Since this administration has come on board, we've started several programs to include our ambassador program, and which I'll let Lieutenant Bartlett talk about, and Sergeant Rico. And one of the things that we can do is build those bridges out of communication. We've sat down with the 19 Pueblos and the 21 total to talk to their leadership and how we can best as a police department assist in many of the functions in law enforcement. You know, there's a lot of boundaries that get crossed between the federal and state government, and one of the things that the bad guys and the criminals don't have is that sense of a geographical boundary. They don't know when one agency stops and another begins. And then, so what we have to do is come together and figure out how we best work together for that common cause, whether it be with the Pueblos, with APD, how we can best serve each other, and what resources we can give each other. This administration started the ambassador program, and part of that is Sergeant Rico's is our Native American ambassador. We also have Lieutenant Bartlett here, who started with the Missing Indigenous Task Force. So I'll let them say a few words, and thank you again for your time. Hope everybody has a great day, and stay safe.
Thank you for allowing us to be here with you today. Kind of wanted to talk about some phrases and some words that weren't in my vocabulary up until the last couple of years. So social justice, Indigenous way of life, Indigenous ways of knowing, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force, and decolonization. As a law enforcement officer in the state of New Mexico, and living in New Mexico for the last 20 years or so, and being from Farmington, none of those words were in my vocabulary up until the last couple of years. But I'm glad they are now, and we're here for you, and we're here today. And after this event, and as we're here today, please come up and talk to us. Please allow us to help you in ways we can. And that's really all I have. I'll give it to Sergeant Rico.
Yate Beldil da Senile. Ahead Hano Yahi do Kodo Nikit Honothoni. She Ya Michael Rico Yinisha. Shamasana do Shichin Nisa Ashkeda. She Awis Tobes Canade in Asha. Ako Joe Bittendas Jan Kitchen no Kodo. Dishigo Shananish, do Dishigo Ebe Yashkit. Don't Eden Slini Yaha Hashkishninsle. The Chetlet Hodene Ebashichin. Kiani Eda Shiche. The Chetlet Hodene Eda Shanale. Akudao the Nenlo Jan Kitchen the no Benashni Shamasan Shiche. Dishigo Beyashkit Isha. Do Binian Kaiso Kaido Binia Koron Kismonosoni. Asto Baiz, Koro Ashananish, Bittendas, Edo Ajabigaho, Benashni, illegal be Benashni, Koro Atatenido, Atkebeda del Yagi, Ako Ebinia, Hisi Kai, Ebe de Negoshi, Nzago, Ahola, Akutao Ehabe, Bengajadiso, Kunchego Dishli, Isha. Ako nanayate do khaniya do shmasan jehenzi do koron keltonindoni heha nsago. Hello all and welcome and thank you for being here. To my Pueblo relatives, Guatana Hopa, Nabastayako Hopa. We do have a booth over here next to the Convention Center. If you have any questions or if you just want to stop by and say hello, we're made available for that. So come on by and thank you very much.
Thank you, Albuquerque Police Department Deputy Chief Josh Brown. Before we get to our next speaker, I just want to make a recognition of the visitors that are here today. We have New Mexico Federation of Democratic Women and Florida, and we're here. And also District Attorney Barbara Romero. Liaison for Justice, Catherine Benali. Christine Laughter, Shanti Yazzie, Dave Moleto, and also Amber Ballinger, Miss Gallup Intertribal Ceremony. Will you please stand? And Ms. Navajo Nation, please stand. And LaDonna Harris, founder of AIO. Those are a few of our special guests here today. Okay. Committing to working for many causes for Indigenous peoples, and is currently co-director of the Leadership Institute at the Santa Fe Indian School, which he co-founded. Everyone, please give a huge applause for Regis Hayfield. She's going to get us ready to go to March.
Guati hopa shratse sewa timet shrakoya katitikuta teum kuhu hoa tsekeishi mi mani kash diwana tuna you eat the church 8 shawa hat tinu awach go mani hu tiwa marstan. Good afternoon to all of you. You've had an incredible, profound afternoon, a beautiful history lesson of our ancestors, their sacrifices, so that we could still be here today. You know, in all of the prayers of our people, we always acknowledge those who have walked upon these lands where we stand and sit today. We acknowledge those who walked upon these lands, breathed the same air we breathe today, born upon these lands, and many ended their life journey upon these lands. So always in all of our prayers we acknowledge their continued spiritual presence, that we depend upon their intercession to continue to guide us in our life journey. You know, our elders teach us that at the time of emergence into this physical space from the spiritual world, that the Creator gifted to us all that would be necessary in our life journey. And the elders teach us that the life chosen for us as Indigenous peoples would be among the hardest with many sacrifices. But for that life journey given to us, the Creator blessed us with Mother Earth. The Creator gifted to us our language that allows us to have the meaningful inroads into the intimate way of life provided to us in our life journey. And the Creator also gifted to us our indigenous laws and customs, our indigenous governance, a process to guide our relationship with all living things. And the Creator gifted to us family that is the teacher of our core values about love and respect and compassion, about humility, about forgiveness. And the Creator also gifted us the spirit of community that we all are a part of. And the Creator gifted us resources with which to sustain us in our life journey. And water is the most precious symbolic representation, the giver of all life. and our elders teach us prophetically that there would be a time in our life journey that other people from all walks of life would come upon our path in our life journey. But the elders teach us that how we respond to the threats of all of the gifts of the Creator would be the ultimate expression of our love for those gifts. And we are blessed today as the President of the United States acknowledge for the first time in his proclamation what the United States defined to be among the worst crimes against humanity that has been part of our life journey. But we have been blessed here today with the governor acknowledging the same, with the honorable members of our legislature, with their presence, with the mayor of Albuquerque and members of his city council, and to the commission and the representatives of their staff who have helped to create this special moment in history that is a very historic moment in our time. This is a time among our indigenous communities where we are making the transition seasonally in quiet ceremony beyond the view of the public, to continue to affirm our faith as the Creator gifted to us for the maintenance of a healthy mind, body, and spirit. And throughout all of the trials and tribulations that we have overcome, that our ancestors sacrificed to define our inheritance, all we have ever asked is to be allowed to live by the original instructions gifted to us by our Creator. If you can imagine that the connections to our places here today, that we could share in the beauty of the gift of the indigenous languages that are among the oldest in the world that have survived colonization, a way of life that we are still able to engage in, even as the United States Constitution denied us as indigenous peoples of this place of the United States of America, to deny us the freedom of religion upon which this land of the United States of America was founded. But we continue with the resilience and the perseverance as taught to us by all those who have gone before us. And we are blessed here today to be supported by many at every level to honor all indigenous peoples of the past, our ancestors, all of us of today, and all those that will inherit the gifts of the Creator, as long as our elders teach us that we express the greatest love to sustain those gifts, to give to the next generation, as every generation before us has gifted to us. And the hard work of all of the women on behalf of those murdered and missing indigenous women. I want to share a moment to acknowledge the leadership of our District Attorney Raul Torres, who has joined us here this afternoon, who in his own wisdom and leadership with our tribal leaders has pledged to work with the Indian Affairs Department, with the Commission here in this city, to develop new systems and new structures that we can respond in ways that can honor all of the women that many have expressed great love for, that we respond in an honorable way to bring them home. So Mr. DA, thank you for your leadership and your wisdom. And I want to say that much has been said about our ugly past, our tragic past, among the most darkest chapters of the history of our history. But the elders teach us that we must not become bitter in our life journey, and that all the people from all walks of life who now call this land of enchantment their home, our elders teach us that we must embrace, to love and respect and show compassion, that we cannot become ugly. Our elders teach us that our perceived enemies in the end become our best teachers of love and respect and compassion. And for all of the people here today celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, we embrace all of you to be part of the family of humanity. We reach out and embrace you, and we welcome you to our homelands that is now your homeland. And together, as our elders teach us, there will be many who will walk with us through our life journey because they share in the same core values of love and respect and compassion. And so we thank all of you here today who represent the many who have walked with us and will continue to walk with us as long as the Creator gives us life. And as our elders teach us, the Creator gives us only one day at a time, but how we live each day is how our lives are defined. And I want to close today in sharing the spirit of family, of our membership to our humanity. To stand, if you will, to join me in a prayer before we end this day. And I want to share with all of you that there is a little 2.5-year-old boy, Sebastian Casals, who is fighting for his life. And I want to honor his struggle in life by including him in our prayer of thanks and appreciation for this day, and all of you for coming here and spending the afternoon as one family, as has been emphasized. Das ist ashe usha tahnus kutstia. Mio hat me kuteum kuhu et a hat de hot yak keisi mi mani gastjuano. Duna you eat the church. Go not me kuquin not me eat shall you our school money. Who Governor Michelle Lohan Grisham? Who Mayor Keller? Go City Council? Who legislators? Tu skot your kakan tu yite traata. Who hopa? Shatset sewat you mit shak uyat. Gumiena to see ohamastan. Hopa you tahanish. Hearts that me kukui me trapats tia. You te sikini na at stu shruan chupist. Ja, die kat shruan soats mishi gumasha te awit tanite. Et a kat it chit a kukashka ja ni kutnu. Et a amu sutras tenehak chani sutras. Et a saat iman tenehak chani sutras. at the saat it the kind this manu out go mark sit you me how na jitre at sem mark sit you me jitre out ya trat to ni me ko trahnam sa ni gat wa o hat ti chashe ia ni huk chupist maani ishaps ia ni jitre amatsi. May you all be blessed to continue our life journey together. And in all of our prayers, it is always a recognition that all we do is for the sake of the children, that they may know peace in their lives. And we ask for blessings that each of you have peace in your communities, that each of you have peace in your homes, and that all of you travel guided by the core values that is the sun rises each day to ask for guidance, guided by our core values, that how you interact with all those who cross your path in the course of the day be guided by a deep sense of love, a deep sense of respect, a deep sense of compassion. Those are the original instructions of our Creator. And if there is anything that in ceremony we ask for, are that each of you, no matter where you come from, what walk of life you enter our life journey, that you know the spirit of the beauty of those gifts. So blessings to all of you from all those who have gone before us, that in this time that history will reflect to be our time, that all we do to define how we make our decisions guided by our core values is what all future generations will inherit from us. And we part today asking one another in a very personal way, what will be my contribution towards those original instructions we are all challenged to sustain in our life journey. So when the Creator calls us home, we can unequivocally say that what we left behind is a spirit of those core values of love and respect and compassion, and to always be mindful that because we are human beings, that we often deviate from the course prescribed for us. And that is why pardon, the ability to forgive, is a core value that gives birth to peace and gives birth to justice. And they are the companions in our life journey. So always be mindful as we begin the march here to honor all of those missing and murdered Indigenous women. Keep them in your minds, in your hearts, in your prayers for their suffering, that they too might find peace and that we find justice for them. Blessings to all of you.
Is everyone ready to begin our Warriors for Justice March around the Civic Plaza? Ladies and gentlemen and families, remember that this is a peaceful protest. Please stay on the sidewalk and look out for traffic. We will begin lining up right over here. We will have volunteers along the way guiding you. Also, please watch out for our children and our elders. We will be walking around the plaza clockwise and then ending here at the stage. Right after our march, We will begin our moment of silence and red lighting of City Hall to honor MMIW. Justice will be leading a march.